The eastern gate of Amarit and crocodile rusted hinges, one side dragging in the dirt, or never dared to open it. Prince Willard noticed this before he noticed anything as about the city. His father had given him to the choice. Not the beggars had a lit in doorways, not even the smell of rat and desperation that hung over everything like a funeral shroud. Dust that broke gates, swinging uselessly in the autumn wind, a perfect symbol of everything the forgotten East had become. "My Lord Prince," said Captain Aldrich, his voice carefully neutral, as he guided his horse alongside Willard's. "Perhaps we should have sent word ahead, prepared the city for your arrival." Willard shook his pale grey as feet and he was 23. The youngest of King Mateo eram Tornes Forsons, and Tony Ward, his father, had been willing to send to this dying corner of the earth his three older brothers held positions of honor and comfort. Governors as prosperous provinces, commanders of elite regiments, advisors at the royal courts. Willard had been given Amarit and its territories, a place so forgotten that most maps didn't bother to include it anymore. "No," he said quietly. "You want to see what they've hidden, what they think they can continue hiding, once I'm installed in whatever passes for a governor's palace here." The roads were the broken gate, and Willard fired the weight respiratory gases, following the small procession. His escort consisted of only 20 soldiers. All his father had been willing to spare, and two advisors. Captain Aldrich, a grizzly veteran of the northern campaigns, and Magistrate Elwan, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, who'd served in the royal bureaucracy for 2 decades before being reassigned to this posting. Both had volunteered to accompany him, which told Willard either that he was supremely loyal or that they'd done something to earn his favor. He suspected the streets of Amarit were choked with refuse and makeshift shelters built against the walls of abandoned buildings. The architecture spoke of former grandeur carved stone facades, pillared walkways, market squares designed for crowds and commerce. But decades of neglect had transformed beauty into decay. Many buildings were simply shells, their roofs collapsed, their interiors given over to rats and weather. The few that remained occupied looked barely habitable. People moved for the streets, with the shuffling gaits of the chronically ill or perpetually hungry. Willard saw hollow cheeks, sunken eyes, skin marked by rashes and open sore. Children sat listlessly in doorways, too tired to play. Old women bent over cooking fires that produced more smoke than heat. And everywhere, the smell, rot and sickness and human waste, the stench of a city dying slowly from 1,000 small failures. The reports understated it. Teman said, with usual composure cracking slightly. "No conditions were bad. But this is what happens when a city is forgotten." Willard finished. "When tax collectors think but nothing is given back. When governors see their posting as punishment rather due, returning rather to the garrison where it is. Drove fortress, my lord. And the history overlooking the trade road. Aldrich J. Titan, though from what intelligence we received, the surprise defeats better maintained than Jesus. They climbed the winding streets toward the hill, and with intelligence, and came a different perspective from higher. Willard could see the full extent of Amarit's decay. The city had been beat to house perhaps 50,000 people. Now he doubted 10,000 remained. Entire neighborhoods stood until their buildings picked clean by scavengers. The agricultural fields beyond was brown, marked by the characteristic and in the distance, beyond the failed crops, rosy the storm-wrecked mountains grey and jagged against the autumn sky, home to the barbarian threads that had been waging the borders between Christian Jesus. The fortress was dated, additionally, its walls of solid stone, at least, though neglect had allowed weeds to grow in every crack and crevice. The garrison numbered perhaps 200 men, most of them looking defeated and poorly equipped. They assembled in the courtyard, as warlords' party arrived, forming ragged lines under the barked orders of their officers. None wore proper uniforms. Many carried weapons that was the garrison was heavy set by land terror, where with a white flash was that tremors was exagerable. My Lord Prince, welcome to me. We received word of your appointment only 3 days ago. E apologize for the state of the fortress. Resources have been limited, Warlord repeated. Dismounting, he was tall and lean. His dark hair pulled back in a sympathetic U. His traveling clothes dusty but well made. He wore his father's signature in a chain around his neck, rather than on his finger, a deliberate choice that was Camada Blackwell. How many soldiers are fit for duty? All of them, my lord. 212 men, ready to serve. How many can march 20 miles, carrying full kit? Blackwell's flash deepened. My lord, the men are. That is, they haven't been paid in 4 months. Moral is how many? Willard's voice remained level, but there was still beneath the quiet tone. Perhaps 70. Maybe EGHTY. Willard walked slowly along the assembled ranks, his eyes moving from face to face. Some men met his gaze with defiance, others with hopes, most with the blank resignation of people who'd stopped expecting anything to change. He saw malnourishment, saw poorly healed wounds, saw the signs of disease that matched what he'd observed in the city below. These soldiers were victims of the same neglect that was killing Amarit. He stopped before a young soldier, who stood at attention despite the fever flush on his cheeks. Your name? Corporal Finn Ashford, my lord. How long have you served here, Corporal? 3 years, my lord. Since you was SXTN. And in those 3 years, as your situation improved or worsened? Finn's eyes flickered toward his commander, then back to Willard. The prince could see the internal struggle. The fear of punishment was desperate hope that someone might finally listen. Worsen, my lord. Much worsen. Willard nodded and continued. When it's seen enough, he returned to where Blackwell stood sweating despite the cool air. Commander, you were relieved of duty effective immediately. Report to Magistrate L1 for processing. Captain Aldrich will assume command of the garrison. Blackwell's face went from red to white. My lord, you can't. You have connections. I'm nephew to Lord. You know exactly who you are and why you were posted here. Willard interrupted. Dastas primeiro know you've been selling military supplies to bandits, pocketing soldiers' pay, and taking bribes to ignore barbarian movements in the mountain passes. You were fortunate in giving you the option to live peacefully. The alternative is a trial for treason, and we both know how that would end. The commander opened his mouth, closed it. They turned and walked stiffly toward where Magistrate L1 waited with 2 of Willard's personal guards. The assembled soldiers watched in stunned silence. Some looked confused. Others looked hopeful. A few looked vengeful. Captain Aldrich, Willard said, raising his voice so all could hear, you have command. Your first priority is determining who in this garrison can be trusted and who cannot. Your second is finding out where the supply money has gone. Your third is getting this man fed, equipped, and trained properly. You want a full report by tomorrow evening. Aldrich saluted crisply. Yes, my lord. And the garrison's current duties. Patrols, watch rotations. Maintain them for now, but carefully. E suspect half your men are come para mais de Hydrich. A simple despair. Trust no one until they've proven themselves. Will adjourn to address os Judaica. Prince will adjourn. For the Santa Candidato. Appointed by Roy decrees Regent and the Stern Private. He did not ask for this posting. He did not want it. But primeiro have it. And you will not waste it. This city is dying. This garrison is rotting. The people who depend on us for protection are suffering. That ends now. He paused, letting his words settle, meeting the eyes of soldiers who'd grown accustomed to broken promises. He cannot fix everything immediately, but he can promise you this. If you serve with honor, you will be paid. If you fight with courage, you will be equipped. If you uphold your oaths, you will be respected. The age of corruption is over. The age of restoration begins today. The silence that followed was broken by a single soldier. Corporal Finn Ashford slamming his fist against his chest in salute. Then the entire garrison was like carnival. It was anti-enthusiasm, Willard knew. It was desperation. But desperation could be channeled. It could be transformed into determination. He returned the gesture for to dismiss the men. As the soldiers dispersed to their duties, Willard climbed the fortress's eastern tower. Wanting to see the full extent of his new domain, Magistrate Ellen joined him at the top. Her expression troubled that was bold. My lord, she said, this count of your part. This is supporter. Removing him so publicly will create enemies at court. You're at court. That's why I'm here. Willard studied the landscape spread before them, the dying city, the blighted fields, the threatening mountains. Besides, my father gave me authority over this province. If he can't use it to remove corrupt officers, what good is it? Your father gave you this province to be rid of you, Ellen said bluntly. Everyone knows it. You're independent, capable, and inconveniently idealistic. Your brothers saw you as a threat to their own positions. Your father saw you as a problem that needed to be handled quietly. They sent you here expecting you to fail. Expecting this place to break you. You know, Willard's voice was calm, accepting. He'd understood his situation from the moment his father had announced the appointment with barely concealed satisfaction. But they made a mistake. They think this posting is a punishment. They think Amarit is worthless. That nothing here matters. They're wrong. How so? Because 10,000 people live here, suffer here, die here. And they matter just as much as the people in prosperous provinces, even if the rest of the realm has forgotten them. He turned to face Ellen. I need information. Everything you can find about this province's administration over the past 20 years. Tax records, supply manifests, garrison reports, judicial proceedings. You want to know where the money went, who took it, and who helped them hide it. Ellen's expression shifted from doubt to something approaching respect. That will take Timmy, my lord. And it will make you more enemies. Then we'd better work quickly. Willard moved to the tower's northern window, looking down at the city below. Smoke rose from cooking fires, in and gray. What do you know about the plagues affecting the people? 3 separate diseases, according to the reports. A wasting sickness that causes fever and blood cough. A skin plague that covers victims in pustules and sores. And what the locals call the Grey Death, a condition that causes progressive weakness until the victim simply stops breathing. Ellen shook her head. Also we are lower quarters. The previous government strike called that the disease is spread anyway. Because quarantine without treatment is just a slow death sentence. World danger building in his test, cold and focused. Is there a temple in the city? Any place of healing? There was a temple to Jansest, the god of medicine and healing. But it was closed years ago when the priest left. They said conditions were too dangerous, that they couldn't help without proper supplies and support. Ellen paused. The building still stands, but it's been looted. Used as a shelter by the desperate. Willard made a mental note. Jansest's order was known throughout the realm for their healing skills and their dedication to the sick. If he could convince them to return, to re-establish their temple here, it would be a crucial first step in addressing the health crisis. But that would require money, supplies, and proof that Amarito was worth saving. The crop blights, he said. What's being done about there? Nothing effective. The previous governor hired dead wizards to perform protective rituals, but the blights continued spreading. Some farmers have simply abandoned their land and moved into the city, which only marks the overcrowding worse. Ellen gestured toward the brown fields, visible in the distance. The soil itself may be poisoned or cursed. Without proper agricultural expertise, it's impossible to know. Add the barbarian tribes, the Broken Spear clan primarily. They controlled the mountain passes and had been raiding border settlements with increasing frequency. 2 months ago, they burned the entire village 20 miles northeast of here. Killed everyone except the children, who they took as slave. Ellen's voice hardened. The garrison was supposed to respond, but Commander Blackwell claimed insufficient manpower. In reality, primeiro suspect he was paid to look the other way. Willard absorbed this information, feeling the immensity of the task before him. Corruption, disease, agricultural failure, and external threats anyone would be a serious challenge. All four together seemed almost insurmountable. But he'd learned long ago that insurmountable problems were just collections of you tackled them systematically, one piece at a time, until the whole structure shifted. I need to address all of this publicly, he said. Tomorrow, gather the city's remaining leadership, merchants, guild heads, anyone with influence. Primeiro ones them assembled in the main square at noon. Its time the people of Amarita understood that their reason was clean and topic. Ellen bowed. As you command, my lord. Though we should warn you, many of those leaders are likely complicit in the corruption. They won't welcome scrutiny. Good. Then they reveal themselves quickly. Willard turned away from the window, his decision made. He didn't come here to make friends. Magistrate, primeiro came here to save a dying city. And if primeiro have to burn out the resources, then that's what he'll do. That evening, Willard was given quarters in the fortress's eastern wing, which a views that the furniture was solid but dusty, the tapestries faded, the windows cracked and poorly sealed against drafts. He didn't complain, compared to what most of the city's inhabitants endured. These rooms were palatial. He spent the hours before midnight reviewing documents Ellen had already compiled: tax records, judicial reports, garrison lodges. The picture they painted was damning. For 2 decades, a succession of corrupt governors had treated Amarit as a personal treasury, extracting wealth while providing nothing in return. Taxes that should have funded infrastructure services had instead disappeared into private coffers. Merchants had been squeezed for bribes. Justice had been sold to the highest bidder, and the people, the ordinary citizens, rather than their leaders, had been systematically abandoned. World felt a danger growing colder, sharper. This wasn't just neglect. It was betrayal, a violation of every oath a ruler swore to their people. His father bore part of the blame. King Mateo had appointed these governors, had accepted their reports without question, had allowed the exploitation to continue because Amarit was too distant and too poor to matter politically. But the governors themselves, the commanders, the magistrates who looked the other way, they were the ones who turned human suffering into personal profit. He would not allow it to continue. Around midnight, a knock came at his door. World looked up to find Captain Aldrich, his face green. "My lord, we have a situation. There's been an incident in the lower city." "What kind of incident?" "A riot, or something close to it. A crowd tried to by one. The watch responded with force. 3 people are dead, a dozen wounded." World stood immediately, reaching for his sword belt. "Shelby." They descended through dark streets, lit only by scattered torches, moving toward the sound yard, shouting and breaking glass. The warehouse district was chaos, crowds surging. Watch officers with clubs raised, buildings burning. World saw engerando faces around him, rage born of desperation and long-suppressed pain. This people had endured too. Now something had broken, and the violence was spreading like fire cold dry grass. Clear a path. Aldrich commanded. His soldiers forming a protective wedge around World. They pushed forward until they reached the center of the disturbance, a large warehouse with its doors barred and guarded by private soldiers, was a merchant house. World climbed onto a wagon bed, making himself visible above the crowd. People of Amarit. His voice cut through the noise, trained by years of military drill to carry over chaos. People of Amarit, hear me. The crowd churned, seeing for perhaps the first time the tall figure in simple traveling clothes. The prince's signet engine visible at his throat. The shouting diminished, replaced by weary silence. Young World Erontorn, your Norwegians, continued. He arrived in your city today. He has seen your suffering. Primeiro have seen the decay, the disease, the desperation, and I swear to you now, that these witching words. Someone shouted, "We've heard words before. Then judge me by my actions." World replied, "Today we removed Commander Blackwell for corruption. Tomorrow you will begin investigating every official who has exploited this province. Those found guilty will face justice, regardless of their rank, their connections, or their wealth. The age of corruption is over." He pointed at the warehouse. "But looting will not save you. Violence will not feed your children or cure your sick. It will only give those who wish to see Amarit fail more reason to abandon you entirely." He paused, letting his gaze sweep across the assembled faces. "I know you're desperate. Primeiro know you're angry. You have every right to be. But help me. Give me time to fix what's broken. Give me a chance to prove that not your nobles are thieves and liars. Give me 30 days. If by then nothing has improved, if I've proven to be just another corrupt governor, then I will open every warehouse myself and let you take what you need." The crowd murmured, the violence ebbing as people considered his words. Then an old woman pushed forward, her face deeply lined, her eyes filled with the kind of pain that came from watching children die. 30 days, she said. 30 days, twins. But if you break your word, we'll remember, and we'll make you pay for it. If I break my word, Worlad said quietly, I deserve whatever payment you demand. He climbed down from the wagon and walked directly into the crowd, ignoring Aldrich's protests. People parted before him, not in respect but in confusion, uncertain how to react to a nobleman who didn't hide behind guards. Worlad moved to where the three bodies lay covered with half cloths. He knelt beside them, his movements slow and respectful. And he pulled back the covering to see their faces. Two men and a woman, all bearing the marks of malnutrition and disease. They'd died trying to steal food they couldn't afford to buy, killed by a what's just rather than imagine. It was everything wrong with a Marit made manifesting three broken bodies. Worlad stood undeterred as the warehouse guard. This building is now under Crown Authority. Its contents will be inventoried and distributed as a fit. Any resistance will be treated as treason. He gestured to Aldrich. Captain. Security's location. Tomorrow we inventory every warehouse in the city. You want to know exactly how much food is being hoarded, why people starve. The private guards looked to their captain, who glanced at the hostile crowd surrounding them and made the intelligent choice. As you command, my lord. Worlad remained in the district until the crowd just, until the fires were extinguished, until the wounded had been only exhausted but grimly satisfied. Word of what had happened that night to lose bread. The city would know that their Norwegian had listened, had acted. It was a beginning, only a beginning. But every restoration started with a single step, a single choice to stop managing decline and start fighting for recovery. Worlad had made that choice. Now he would see it cast. As he finally collapsed into his borrowed bed, in the hours before dawn, his last thought was of the old woman's warning. We remember, and we'll make you pay for it. He would remember too. Remember the hollow eyes, the wasted bodies, the desperation that drove people to violence. Remember that behind every document, every policy, every administrative decision, there were human lives and dollars. The forgotten it had a legend now, and Worlad Ironthorn would make certain it was never forgotten again. The sun rose on Worlad's second day in Amarit, to find the city transformed not in substance, but in attention. News of the previous night's confrontation had spread through every court, carried on the lips of people who'd grown accustomed to being ignored. The prince had walked among them, had not besieged their dead, had stalled the merchants who'd grown fat while children starved. It was more than anyone had done in living memory, and the city held its collective breath, waiting to see if the promises would become actions. Worlad had no intention of disappointing them. By mid-morning, he stood in order doors being Amarit's courthouse, a building up to Magistrate Elwan had spent the night assembling records, and the days before them carved with contracts and correspondence do documentary verdadeiros do decades of systematic theft. Here, Elwan said, pointing to a series of entries in a tax ledger. The annual revenue from this province should be approximately 40,000 gold crowns. But for the past 10 years, the crown has received barely 5,000 per year. The rest has been listed as administrative costs and necessary expenditures. Will add study the numbers. His expression hardening. 35,000 crowns. Annually, for 10 years. He did the calculation quickly. 350,000 crowns, stolen from the people who need it most. And that's just the official records. I've found evidence that side agreements, private taxes, extortion schemes. The real total is probably twice that. Elon pulled out another document. This one a contract. Look at this. 5 years ago, the city needed repairs to the Eastern Aqueduct. The bid was accepted from a contractor named Maris Hornware for 6,000 crowns. But he cross-referenced the garrison's construction logs. And they showed that no repairs were ever completed. The aqueduct is still broken. The money simply vanished. And where is Maris Hornware now? Dead. Convenient heart failure was receiving the payments. His widow lives in considerable comfort in a village city. The city. Elon's voice was bitter. The previous governor, Lucius Vey, was a cousin by marriage. It suspects the entire contract was fabricated. A way to transfer money from the provincial treasury to private hands. Willard sat back, pressed to David Kerr. It wasn't just one or two officials taking bribes. It was a network. A system designed to extract maximum wealth while providing minimal accountability. And everyone involved had assumed they were safe. That distance from the capital and the province's importance would shield them from consequences. They were about to learn other words for he said. Start with the obvious cases: former governors, garrison commanders, merchants who received fraudulent contracts. We work our way down the chain from there. My lord, the HTS ... that could be 50 people or more. Many are no longer in the province. Some are back at court, protected by powerful families. Then we pursue them there, sir. Willard Matthews, he told the people primeiro would deliver justice, immediately, make the warrants, e ele signed them. The door opened, and Captain Aldrich entered, entire but satisfied. My lord, the garrison inventory is complete. It's worse than we thought. Termine. It should have supplies for 6 months, weapons, armor, food, medical provisions. We have enough for perhaps 3 weeks, and half of what remains your door broken. Aldrich laid out our reports. The supply contract show regular deliveries, all properly documented and paid for. But the materials never arrived, mounts. Someone's been running a supply fraud scheme for years. The same someone who's been stealing tax revenue. Willard guessed. Almost starved. Pandans between Commander Blackwell and the capital. They were splitting the profits. Fake supply. Deliveries, packeted payments, forged receipts to make everything look legitimate. Aldrich's expression was murderous. My soldiers have been starving and dying because these bastards wanted novellas and silk robes. Willard stood and walked to the window, looking out over the city. Roger in his chest was a living thing now, cold and sharp and demanding action. But Tanger alone wouldn't rebuild Amarit. He needed to channel it, to transform rage into policy, emotion into concrete change. Captain, what's the minimum we need to make the garrison function? 6 months as proper supplies. No weapons for at least half the troops. Medical provisions to treat the sick and injured. Draining materials to rebuild the supply. Aldrich paused. Add back pay. The men need to know their value, that their service matters. Without that, we'll never rebuild Mara. Cast, 20,000 crowns. Mina managed to do it properly. Willard turned back to Elwan. The warehouse we seized last night. Inventory it completely. You want to know everything it contains and its value. Then do the same for every other major warehouse in the city. We're going to find that those crowns, one way or another, by seizing private property. Elonston was careful, neither approving nor disapproving, that we cause significant political backlash, only if we do it arbitrarily, but we're not seizing property, we're recovering stolen funds. Every merchant, whatever the person given a choice. Return portion well, office prosecution, spreading his hands over the evidence, documents everything. Make the case airtight. When the merchants complain to my father, primeiro what proof that every coin we took was owed to the people of this province. A knock at the door interrupted them, and a young soldier entered, looking nervous. My lord, the city's merchant council has assembled in the square as you requested. There, not pleased about being summoned. Good, Willard said, reaching for his coats. Let them be displeased. It to make the next part easier. The main square was Amarit's only remaining public space, large enough for significant gatherings. It had been beach in better days, a broad plaza of fitted stone, surrounded by buildings that had once housed government offices and guild halls. Now many of those buildings were abandoned, their windows empty, eyes staring down at the crowd assembling below. Willard had ordered a forged detective question, and one realized the days there was business starting. Before them stood those merchants and traders who'd survived the province's decline by adapting to its corruption. They wore expensive clothes that looked grotesque against the backdrop surrounding them, silk and jewelry that had been purchased with the province's lifeblood. Behind and around the merchants, a much larger crowd had gathered, common citizens, drawn by curiosity or hope or simply the need to see what would happen next. Willard noted their presence with satisfaction. He wanted witness, wanted the people to see that justice could still exist, even in a place as forgotten as the Forgotten East. Merchants of Amarit, he began, his voice carrying towards us coin. Young Prince Willard is doing. Appointed by King Mateo as regent of this province, I summon you here to address a matter of significant concern. The systematic theft of crown revenues, exploitation of the people and the virgin action. White man, corpulent steps forward. My lord prince, young Garvan Mas, head of the merchant council. On behalf of my colleagues, I must protest this characterization. We are law-abiding citizens, conducted our business in accordance with all applicable regulations. Regulations written by corrupt governors for the benefit of correctors. Willard interrupted. Magistrate Elwan, please read the charges. Elwan stepped forward, her voice clear and cold. Garvan Mas, you are charged with conspiracy to defraud the crown, or false tax declarations, and bribery of provincial officials. Evidence shows you have underaged. The buy an average %, novel, stage news. Resulting in unpaid taxes totaling approximately 12,000 crowns. You are also charged with essential supplies during times of crisis and profiteering from human suffering. Nossas face were from to purple. These are all traders' lies. You demand nothing. Warlord said quietly, but the stealing is security process. You will return the stolen funds, or you will face trial. The choice is yours. You won't be threatened by some masked himself, but not quickly enough. The implied insult ran there, and Warlord saw the crowd behind the merchant's shift, and repelling to them. Some what? Warlord asked, stepping to the edge of the platform. Some planes? Some representative of the king's justice? Or were you about to say something else? Something that would make your contempt for crown authority even more explicit. Mas said nothing, but his silence was answer enough. Warlord gestured, and 4 soldiers moved forward the merchant into custody. You've made your choice. Captain Aldrich, please Garvan Mazar arrest. These assets are close on resident. Mas was led away, sputtering protests and threats. Warlord addressed the remaining merchants. Anyone else wish to test my resolve, or would you prefer to settle this matter peacefully? He paused, letting them absorb what had just happened. I'm not here to destroy Amarit's economy. I'm here to fix it, but that requires every rebuilding their fair share. The age of exploitation is over. Those who accept this can continue doing business. Those who refuse will face the same fate as Garvan Mas. The silence that followed was profound. Then, one by one, the merchants began to nod some reluctantly. Others with what might have been willies. Perhaps they'd know the correction couldn't last forever. Perhaps they'd simply been waiting for someone with enough authority to stop Magistrate Alwan will meet with teacher individually. Warlord continued. He will provide complete financial records for the past 5 years. Any discrepancies will be investigated. Any attempts to hide assets will be treated as admission of guilt. But those who cooperate, who acknowledge their role in these provinces decline or work to make amends, will be treated fairly. I'm offering you a path to redemption. I suggest you take it. He descended from the platform, leaving Elwan to handle the administrative details. The crowd of common citizens parted before him, but this time there was some indifference in their expressions, not just confusion or desperate hope, but the beginnings of belief. They'd seen a prince publicly challenge the merchants who'd exploited them, had watched one of the most powerful men in the city arrested without ceremony or hesitation. It was proof that those spoken in the night were possessed. Warlord made his way back to the courthouse, but Captain Aldrich cut Rizal. My lord, there's someone who needs to speak with you, says it's urgent. The someone turned out to be a young woman near the simple robes of Jansecht's healing order. She was perhaps 30, with dark skin and tired eyes, and she carried herself with a very sincere and thoughtful face. She bowed and yielded. My lord prince. Primeiro ancestor Brenna, as the temperado Jansecht, I heard you were asking about the order's departure from Amarit. It was, Warlord said, gesturing for her to sit. I'd like to convince your order to return. The People here desperately need proper medical care. Sister Brenna's expression was pain. You understand, my lord. And primeiro could say the order would respond immediately to your request. But the truth is, you were driven out. Not by violence, but by impossibility. Explain. 5 years ago, a temple here served nearly 1,000 patients daily. We had to have healers, dozens of acolytes, and adequate supplies of medicine and clean water. Then the new governor, Lucius Vane, imposed a temple tax. He claimed our healing services were a business and should contribute to provincial revenues. The tax was known as 3,000 crowns annually. far more than we could possibly afford. When we couldn't pay, he seized our supplies. Then he restricted our access to clean water from the aqueducts, claiming we were using more than our allotments. Sister Brenna's hands tightened in her lap. We tried to continue, but supplies with our funds, carried water from quays, greeted patients in the streets, when the temple became unusable. But disease spread faster than we could treat it. Our health started falling sick. We died as well. Eventually, our high priestess made the decision to withdraw. She believed we could serve better by staying alive and waiting for conditions to improve than by dying in a city that seemed determined to kill us. Willard felt the familiar cold danger settling in his chest. Governor Vane deliberately destroyed your ability to help. He condemned thousands to death for a tax payment that probably went straight into his own coffers. Yes, my lord. Though proving it was impossible at the time. Sister Brenna leaned forward, and now her tired shores. But if you truly mean to change if you can provide the support we need the order would. I've been living in the city secretly for the past year, treating who we can with limited supplies. I've seen the suffering. It does a chance to rebuild, to actually save this people, and help however we can. What would you need? Specifically, Sister Brenna pulled out a carefully folded paper, clearly prepared in advance. The temple building needs repairs, roofs, windows, basic plumbing. 5,000 crowns should cover it. We need medical supplies, herbs, bandages, surgical tools, clean linens. Another 3,000. And with work protection for might try to interfere with our work. Finally, we need your word. Seal down witness. Again be taxed for providing care to those in need. Then, Willard didn't hesitate. I'll provide the funds, the protection, and the guarantee. How soon can your order return? If it's only word today, 2 weeks, perhaps less. If he explained theirs, Sister Brenna's voice cracked slightly. My lord, people are dying every day. Children, although than the weak, the great death alone claims 3 or 4 lives daily. If we can stop it, save even half as those who are currently NFCTAD. Then we don't have time to waste. Well understood. Magistrate Elwan will draft the necessary documents. Captain Aldrich will assign guards to protect the stairs begin. And he personally oversee the supply procurement. Ensure nothing is stolen or delayed. 2 weeks, Sister Brenna. In 2 weeks, you add your healers saving lives. The non-departed with tears of relief in her eyes, and Willard returned to the endless work of reconstruction. The afternoon was consumed by meetings, with builders about the temple repairs, with garrison officers about security protocols, with Elwan about the legal framework for recovering stolen assets. By evening, his head ached and this dropped the foundation. Piece by piece, the machinery of functional government was being reassembled. As darkness fell, Willard stood again at the fortress tower, looking out over Amarit. Lights were appearing in windows more than he'd seen the previous nights. Perhaps word of the day's events had given people reason to burn their lamps a little longer, to stay awake when something closer to hope than despair. It was a small king, barely noticeable, but small things mattered. Small changes accumulated into transformation. My lord, Aldrich's voice came from behind him. We have a visitor, a barbarian, from the mountains. Says he needs to speak with you about the world journey sharply. A barbarian. How did he get past the earth? He didn't sneak in, my lord. He walked up to the gate, and demanded an audience, said his name is Kay of the Broken Spear clan, and that he comes under flag of truce. This was unexpected. The barbarian tribes rarely communicated with lowland settlements except through violence. Warlord's king reacted despite his exhaustion. Bring him to the council chamber. But keep guards present, truce or not, I'm not taking chances. The man, who entered the council chamber 5 minutes later, was not what Warlord had expected. He'd anticipated someone massive and scarred, wearing animal skins and with sand-darkened skin and gray-striped black hair bound in dozens of small braids. He wore practical leather and wool, and his only visible weapon was a knife at his belt, ceremonial rather than practical, its handle carved with enchantment. He studied well with short voice, then spoke in accent but clear command. You are the new prince, the one who seized the grain warehouses, arrested the fad merchant. Dion, and you are king of the Broken Spear clan. He unabashed, fought to disguise their beds. Warlord gestured, watcher, but Cato remained standing. I'm listening. My people had been raiding your settlements because your people raided ours first. Caio's voice was matter of fact, not defensive. For 5 years, your garrison has been crossing into the mountain passes, burning our villages, stealing our livestock, killing our elders. We raid back because it is the only way to survive. Warlord felt the ground shift beneath him. That's impossible. The garrison reports show defensive actions only. Your garrison reports lie. Kaya pulled a piece of cloth from his belt, a torn military banner, bearing the crest of Amaritz. Garrison, this was taken from soldiers, Robertson's village, 3 months ago. 12 people died. The village stored their winter food. Your soldiers took it all. Warlord took the banner, recognizing it immediately. He turned to Aldrich. Captain. Aldrich's face was grey. It's satanic, my lord. And now that I think about it, there were surf patrol expeditions. He never outdid was conducting that, but he was waiting for perfect. Warlord's voice was stealing from the tribes and selling the spoils, probably the same way he sold military supplies. And when the tribes retaliated, he recorded it as unprovoked aggression to justify his own crimes. Kay nodded slowly. Your garrison has been led by a man without honor. But you are not that man. I have been watching you. I saw what you did in the city. How you spoke to the people. How you removed the corrupt commander. I told my chief that perhaps this new prince might be different. That perhaps there could be another way. What way? The way of the old covenant. Kay's expression became almost reverent. Long ago, before your people beat cities and mine retreated to the mountains, there was peace. Our tribes and your villages made oath together, a magical binding that protected the earth. People would not cross into the high passes without permission. Our people would not raid the lowlands without cause, and both sides would defend each other against external threats. Warlord leaned forward, intrigued. A mutual defense pact, enforced by magic, by sacred oath, sworn before the gods and sealed in lunch. The magic ensures that anyone bad fortune. That came met Warlord's eyes. It worked for 200 years. Only when your king's orphan had forgot the old ways did the covenant break. But it could be renewed. If you have the courage to try, what would the choice be? Simple. Your people stay out of the mountain passes except for agrid creatures. My people stop raiding your settlements. Both sides share information about threats abundance. Hostile tribes from further north. Dangerous creatures. And if either side faces attack from multi-siege forces. The other must provide dates. Warlord considered this carefully. A peace treaty with the barbarian tribes would eliminate one of Amarit's major problems. It would free the garrison to focus on defense and rebuilding, rather than offensive operations that served only to enrich corrupt commanders. And it that he was willing to make unconventional choices to break from the failed policies of the past. But it would also be controversial. The court adds that Ptal viewed the mountain tribes as savages, barely human. A formal alliance would be seen as weakness, as consorting with enemies of civilization. His father would be furious. His brothers would mock him. And the merchants, who profited from the conflict, would resist losing their excuse for militarization. Warlord smiled grimly. All the more reason to do it. You need to understand the oath, he said. The exact terms, the magical binding. What happens if either side violates it? Kay's expression brightened with what might have been respect. My chief expected you to refuse. To say such things were beneath a prince of the lowlands. She will be pleased to be wrong. War chief is wise to have low expectations. They're easier to exceed. Warlord stood. But not my PRD6SURS ponto e am here to fix what's broken. Even if it means making alliances that make other people uncomfortable. If your covenant can bring peace to these borderlands, you want to hear more. They talked deep into the night, Kate explaining the ancient traditions of the Wapringin, the holy of the tribal shamans who would conduct the ceremony, the responsibilities each side would bear. The magic was old, predating the current pantheon of gods, earth magic, bound to the land. And it would bind him personally, not just politically. If he broke the oath, he would suffer the consequences, just as any tribal member would. It was exactly the kind of commitment that is meaningful. I do it, Warlord said finally. But he has conditions. The reading must stop immediately, even before the oath is formalized. Your people must return any captives taken in the past year. And you and your chief to meet with me personally, to negotiate the exact terms before the binding ceremony. Done, Kay said without hesitation. The captives will be returned if you can't will within it. And the president now, speak with her authority in this. They clasped for arms see the traditional gesture of agreement, and Warlord felt some in shifts. This was more than politics. This was the beginning of a new relationship between peoples who'd been enemies for generations. It might fail, probably would fail, given how many forces would work against it. But it was worth it after Kay departed, escorted safely back to the mountains by a small guard detail. Warlord returned to his chambers to find Magistrate Alwan weak. Her expression troubled. You're making powerful enemies, my lord, she said without preamble. The merchant arrest, the warehouse seizures, and now you negotiating with the barbarians. Word we're raising. Your father will not peace. My father sent me here to fail. Why should primeiro care about his pleasure? Warlord bored himself wine, his first of the day, and drank it in one long swallow. Besides, everything under my apparatus widgets. I am cleaning up kitchen, providing for the people of Earth, and establishing peace on the borders. If the king objects to any of that, he'll need to explain why publicly. Politics doesn't work that way, and you know it. Elon moved to the window, looking out at the city. Your brothers will use this against you. They claim you granted that you are betraying civilized values by allying with savages. They turn the court against you. Let them try. Warlord sat down his cap. He didn't come here to play political games. Primeiro came here because primeiro was sent, and I'm making the best of it. If that means challenging assumptions and breaking with tradition, so be it. The people of Amarik deserve better than what they've received. And if giving them that, Maxman Papi alert court. Primeiro can live with an Papi alert. Elon turned to face him, and there was something in her expression, not just respect, but a kind of fierce pride. You remind me of your grandfather, King Aldous, before he took the throne. He was the youngest son too, you know. Never expected to rule. But when his brothers fell to plague and he inherited, he transformed the kingdom. Made alliances that reformed systems everyone said couldn't be changed. By the time he died, he was called Aldous the Wise. I'm not trying to be wise, Warlord said quietly. I'm just trying to be decent. Do the right by people who've been wronged. Is that so extraordinary? Are these words? Yes, my lord. Yes, it is. Elon bowed slightly. I draft the documents you need, writs for the temple reconstruction, formal investigation notices for the corruption cases, preliminary terms for the tribal covenant. It will be ready by morning. She left. And Warlord was finally alone with his thoughts. The day had been long and consequential, full of decisions that forward routine. He'd made enemies, certainly, but we'd also begun the work of transition. And one day, he'd started dismantling the corruption for initiated the and opened negotiations for peace with the Mounts tribes. It was a beginning, only a beginning. The real test would come in the following weeks, when resistance emerged, when the intruders fought back, when the easy promises gave way to hard realities. But Warlord expected this to be easy. He'd expected it to be necessary. And that made all the difference. That third week of Warlord's regions began with purpose, head, and relentless, turning Amarit's unpaved streets into rivers of mud. But despite the weather, the city was alive with activity. Construction the hammers, when alternated merchants line outside the courthouse, clutching financial records and wearing expressions of resentment with resignation. In the garrison, soldiers dread with no weapons and full stomachs, their movements sharper than the transformation was visible, measurable, but it had come at a price. Warlord stood in the council chamber, reviewing reports from Captain Aldrich, and the news was troubling. 17 men deserted last night, the captain said, his voice tight with control danger. Took weapons, supplies, horses. They're heading west, probably trying to reach the capital before we can send word of their crimes. Let them go, Warlord said after a moment. We can't spare resources for pursuit. And honestly, we're better off without soldiers, who definitely don't face accountability. They were all part of Blackwell's inner circle, or complicity in the supply fraud. Aldrich slammed his fist on the table. They should face justice. They will, eventually. But right now, our priority is rebuilding, not revenge. Warlord moved to the window, watching workers carry timber through the rain. How many men do we have left, who are genial and loyal? 140. Give or take. The rest are uncertain, waiting to see which way the wind blows. Aldrich's expression softened slightly. But those 140 are solid. They've seen what you're trying to do. They believe in it. That's worth more than twice their number of mercenaries. Anakin interrupted them, and Sister Buena entered, her grey robes damp from the rain. Her face was drawn, and whirled immediately no summoning was wrong. The wasting sickness, she said without preamble. It's spreading faster than we anticipated. We've identified 43 new cases in the past 3 days alone. Without intervention, we lose it as a design. I thought you were threatened, Willard said, fighting down a surge of frustration. The supplies arrived, the temple is functional, the supplies help, but they're not enough. Verbena moved to the table, spreading out a hand. The disease is waterborne. It spreads through contaminated wells and the broken aqueduct system. We can treat symptoms, we can ease suffering, but until we fix the water supply, we're just delaying the inevitable. Willard studied the map. Seeing the clusters of infection concentrated in the poorest quarters, helped drew water from shallow wells that were probably contaminated by the city's inadequate sewage system, the aqueduct. It's been broken for years. How much to repair it? 10,000 crowns, minimum. Magistrate Elwan hadn't worked carrying her a car. And that's just for basic functionality. A proper repair would cost 3 times that. The entire system needs to be rebuilt. No pipes, no reservoirs, proper filtration. We don't have 30,000 crowns, Willard said flatly. Not after funding the temple, the garrison we supply, and the merchant reimbursements. The provincial treasury is nearly empty. Then Peopre will keep dying. Sister Brenna's voice was steady, but Willard heard the accusation beneath it. You can arrest corrupt officials and negotiate peace treaties, my lord. But none of that matters if the basic infrastructure kills everyone anyway. She was right, and Willard knew it. He'd been focused on the visible problems, corruption, military weakness, external threats. But the sailor was the city itself, its broken systems slowly poisoning the Peopre who depended on them. Without clean water, without proper sanitation. Amarit would continue to die no matter how much political will he brought to bear. The agricultural lands, he said suddenly. The blighted fields outside the city. What would it cost to live there? Ela looked confused by the change of subject. I don't know, my lord. No one seriously attempted it in years. The soil is exhausted, possibly cursed. Why? Because if we can restore crop production, we restore the province's economic base. Right now, Amarit imports everything: food, goods, supplies. That's expensive and makes us dependent on trade routes that can be disrupted. But if we had productive farmland again, we could feed ourselves, generate surplus for trade, build actual wealth instead of just distributing poverty. That's a long-term solution, Adric pointed out. Peopre are dying now. They need water now. You know, Willard's mind was racing, seeing connection. Calculating possibilities. But everything is connected. We need money to fix the water. We need productivity to generate money. We need agricultural success to build productivity. And we need all of it to work together, each piece supporting the others. Returned to his merchant. How much are you taking for far? 18,000 gross. Another 20,000 in property and goods we could sell, if we had buyers. Say it or whatever it takes. It don't care if we get a value, turn everything into cash immediately. Willard moved to the map, pointing at the fields beyond the walls. And send riders to the capital. You want to hire an agricultural specialist, someone who understands soil restoration and cross breaking. offer double the standard wage if they can be here within a month. My lord, that's a significant expense, Elon cautioned. And there's no guarantee it will work. There are no guarantees for any FTHIS. Willard's voice was sharp with frustration. But sitting here and managing decline is an option. We need to take risks. Make investments. Actually try to fix things even if failure is possible. Sister Brenna studied him with those tired, knowing eyes. You are learning, she said quietly. That governance isn't about making one big decision but about juggling 100 small ones. Replied. How quickly can you... Not perfect, not permanent, but enough to reduce the infection rates? If we had boiling stations in each quarter, volunteers to maintain them, and a supply of purification herbs, perhaps we could cut transmission by half. That would buy me for permanent worth. Allocate 500 pounds for immediate water purification efforts. Captain, assign soldiers, and establish the patient. You are the package as a title. Where's the third tap? We can't fix everything at once, but we can start the dying. That's where to start. The next leaders will have boiling stations appeared in every quarter, manned by volunteers and protected by garrison soldiers. Sister Brenna's healers moved through the city teaching people how to purify water, how to identify contamination, how to prevent disease spread. The infection rate slowed, though people continued to die, just fewer of them, and that had to be enough for now. On the fourth day, Kay returned to Amarit, accompanied by a woman who could only be his chief. She was perhaps 50, with a angry hair and a face marked by the scars of old battles. She wore layered furs and leather, and carried herself with the authority as someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. She announced, her voice carrying the same accent scale, but with greater force. Chief of the Mine, keeper of the old ways, he came to speak of covenant and peace. Willard received her in the fortress's great hall, with Captain Aldrich and Magistrate Elwan as witnesses. He'd prepared carefully for this meeting, reviewing everything Kay had told him about tribal customs and protocol. He stood to greet her rather than remaining seated, a gesture of respect among the tribes. Chief Zara, you honor me with your presence. Young Willard Ironthorne, regent of these province and representative of King Mateo. Primeiro came to speak of the same covenant and peace between our peoples. Thera studied him with shock dark eyes that missed nothing. You are young, untested. Why should my people bind themselves to one who may fail? Because I'm the only one trying. Willard's voice was steady. Your people had suffered under the raids of corrupt commanders. My people had suffered under the retaliations those raids provoked. We've been locked in a cycle of violence that serves neither side. I can't promise you won't fail, but I can promise I try to do better than those who came before me. Pretty words, but Tera's expression had shifted slightly, showing what might have been a prover. Kay tells me you removed the corrupt commander, that you're punishing those who profited from our people's pain. Is this true? It is. Commander Blackwell is in custody awaiting trial. Several merchants purchased stolen tribal goods, have been fined or imprisoned. And I've ordered the garrisons to cease all operations and dungeons, tasks, except for defensive patrols on our side of the dungeon. Captives have been returned, here are said, 11 children, 2 elders, all alive. though some bear the marks of harsh treatments. Your predecessor's garrison was not gentle. I apologize, on behalf of the crown, Willard said formally. Those who committed such a don't kill slowly. Then moved to the table where maps had been laid out showing the disputed borderlands. The Old Covenant marked these lands as shared territory, neither fully yours nor fully ours. Your people could farm the lower valleys, our people could hunt the higher slopes, and both could use the passes for trade and travel with proper notice and respect. That seems fair, Willard said. Studying the maps, what about security? How do we prevent individual violations from destroying the peace? The oath itself provides punishment for oath breakers, Vera explained. But both sides must also agree to surrender any who violates the covenant for judgment. If one of my warriors raids your settlements, you will hand them over to face your justice. If one of your soldiers attacks our villages, you will do the same. Agreed. And mutual defense. If hostile forces attack either of our peoples, the other must provide aid. Not necessarily military aid, the tribes at your battles, but information, supplies, safe passage through our lands. And if raiders come from the north, threatening both our peoples, we face them together. They negotiated through the afternoon, working through details and potential complications. They are proved to be sharp and pragmatic, willing to compromise on smaller points, but Willard found himself respecting her. This was a leader who'd kept her people alive in harsh conditions, who'd adapt and circumstances without abandoning tradition. As dusk fell, they reached agreement on Yara pulled a ceremonial badge from her. Its hand carved from bone and inlaid with silver. The Atbindin requires blood from both leaders. Mali and yours. Are you prepared to seal this agreement in the old way? Willard extended his hand without a hesitate any ponto e am.terra drew the blood across his palm, a quick, clean cut that wet with blood. Then she did the same to her own hand, and they clasped hands, their blood mingling. She began to speak in a language Willard didn't harsh, guttural syllables that seemed to resonate. River stones as the fortress. He felt something shift as she spoke, a tightening in his chest like invisible chains being forged. The air grew heavy, charged with power that made the stand up. This was real magic, or done primal. The kind that predated civilization's attempts to codify and control the supernatural. Shera finished incantation and released his hand. The cut in Willard's palm had already stopped bleeding, and when he looked closely, he saw that the wound had seized itself, leaving only a thin white scar in the shape of a circular pattern, the mark of the Atbindin. It is done, Hera said. You are now bound to the covenant, as we, as our peoples. May the earth itself punish any who violates this sacred trust. Willard fired the weight settling on him. A responsibility that went beyond political agreements. He'd literally bound himself to this peace, staked his own life and fortune on maintaining it. If he broke faith, the consequences would be immediate and personal. May we build a peace that endures, he said formally. May our peoples prosper in alliance, rather than suffer in conflict. Terra smiled the first genial words he'd seen from her. You have courage, young prince. Perhaps foolish courage, perhaps wise. Timidity, but you have honored the old ways, and my people will remember this. She departed with care at dusk, riding back toward the mountains under a sky cleared of rain. Willard watched the tower. Its carved pan a physical reminder of the commitment he'd just made. That was either brilliant or insane, Madestrateluan said from behind the passable boat. History we decide which will turn away from the window. What's the status and agricultural specialist? We have responded to the advertisement. All are willing to come for the salary offered. But they want guarantees of safety and adequate supplies to work with. Give them whatever guarantees they need. We can't rebuild the province's economy without functioning farmland. World moved toward the stars. Honest water system repairs. As allocated the funds, work begins in 3 days, weather permitting. Basic functionality should be restored within 2 months. Not fast enough, but better than nothing. World descended and moving to the next problem. The next decision. We need to establish a proper administrative structure. Right now, everything flows through you, me, and Captain Aldrich. That's not sustainable long term. I've been drafting proposals for a city council, Elon said. Representatives from each quarter. Elected by the residents. They would handle local issues and serve as intermediary between Camante and the region's office. Will stopped on the stairs. Surprised and pleased. The HTS. Actually exactly what we need. People who feel invested in the city's success, who have authority to make decisions, without waiting for my approval, in every minor matter. It's how the old cities governed themselves, before the centralization reforms. I thought it might work here. Especially given how handsome your approach has been. You can't personally oversee every aspect of Amarit's recovery. Implement it. Set up elections within a month. And make sure the process is fair, no buying votes, no intimidation. You want genuine representation. They reached the ground floor, and world was immediately pulled into another crisis, a dispute between refugees from a burned village and city residents who didn't want to share already scarce resources. Spent an hour mediating, ultimately finding space for the refugees in one of the restored buildings and receive temporary support while they get established. It was nearly midnight when finally came, exhausted and a servant had left bread, cheese, and cold meat on a tray, and whirled that mechanically while reviewing the day's paperwork. His card commits a constant reminder of the oath he'd sworn. He wondered if the magic would truly punish old breakers, or if it was simply psychological. The waiter learned betrayal would have consequences. Either way, it bound him more surely than any political threat could have. He'd staked his own well-being on maintaining peace with the tribes. And somehow, that felt right. Leaders should bear personal responsibility for their decisions. Should feel the consequences of failure in their own flesh. A knock came at his door, and Captain Aldrich entered looking troubled. My lord, we have a situation. The agricultural specialist, who was supposed to arrive tomorrow, is being waylaid on the road. Bandits, apparently. His escort fought them off, but he is demanding triple the agreed salary to continue to Amarit. Says the danger is unworth the standard rates. Set down his breath, fighting the urge to throw some. Of course he is. Everyone sees Amarit as a place to extract wealth rather than to build it. Recall moments. How badly do we need him? Badly. He's the only one willing to attempt to restore in Carstlana. Then pay him. But make it clear that the increased salary comes with increased expectations. If he can't deliver results within 3 months, he forfeits the bonus. World rubbed his eyes, feeling the weight of accumulated decisions. Anything else? One more thing. Reports from the eastern border. Tribal scouts report movements in the deep mountains, possibly a war bunny from one of the northern clans. They might be planning raids on both our territory and Terras Peopli. Then the Covenant is being tested already. Warlord straightened, exhausted and falling away. Send word to Chera. Tell her we've received the same intelligence and ask for coordination. If these northern rays are a threat to both our Peoples, we face them together. As Dove requires. Exactly as Dove requires. Willard stood, moving to the window one more time. The city below was dark except for scattered lights, watchfires. The temple's eternal flame, labs and windows where people worked late or couldn't sleep. Each light represents the life, a person depending on it to make the right choices. Captain, how many people would you estimate we'd saved so far? Through the water unification, the temple restoration, and the tribal raids? Aldwych considered this carefully. Hard to say with certainty, my lord, but the death rate has dropped by at least half. If we extrapolate over the next year, perhaps 500 lives that would have been lost otherwise. 500. The number should have felt significant, triumphant even. But all Willard could think about were the hundreds more, who would die anyway. The children would starve because the harvest remained blighted. The elderly would freeze when winter did. The sick would succumb to diseases that better infrastructure would have prevented. It's not enough, he said quietly. It's more than most talk possible, but it's not enough. Willard turned the incremental approach isn't saving Peopli quickly enough. My lord, you've been reading. You've rested characteristics, restored the and peace with the tribes, started the infrastructure base. That's extraordinary. And Peopli are still dying. That's the only measure that. Willard moved toward his desk, pulling out maps and financial records. We need a comprehensive plan. Not just reacting to crises, but actively building toward a vision of what Amarit could become. A timeline, specific goals, measurable outcomes, adequate, able it consort. You're going to burn yourself out, my lord. A leader needs rest. I rest when it stops. Willard spread the maps across his desk. His carved palm pressed flat against the paper showing Amarit's territories. Go get Mother Straightaway. Add Sister Brenna if she's still awake. We're going to design the next 6 months of reconstruction. Tonight. Now just past midnight. Then we worked all the nights. Peopli are dying while we sleep, Captain. That marks rest a luxury we can't afford. Aldwych left, and Willard stood alone in he had the maps that represented every farm, every village, every neighborhood full of Peopli who depended on decisions made in ruins like this. The weight of responsibility was crushing, but he welcomed it, embraced it, because the alternative.
And so, another chapter of our saga concludes, but the tapestry of time still holds many plots to be unveiled. To not miss the unfolding of upcoming events and continue the journey with us, subscribe to the channel and activate notifications. Leave your like so more listeners discover our tales and share this story with those who also yearn for new legends. What was your favorite moment from this narrative? Leave your comment below and prepare for the next chapter that will soon echo here.